Welcome to Becoming a Sleep Consultant. I'm your host, Jane Havens, a certified sleep consultant and founder of both Snooze Fest by Jane Havens and Center for Pediatric Sleep Management. On this podcast, I'll be discussing the business side of sleep consulting. You'll have an insider's view on launching, growing, and even scaling a sleep consulting business. This is not a podcast about sleep training. This is a podcast about business building and entrepreneurship. Alanna is a Boston-based mom of two, an occupational therapist, potty training consultant, and certified pediatric sleep consultant through the Center for Pediatric Sleep Management. For over 3 years, she has been helping families navigate their sleep journeys through her business, Big Picture Sleep Solutions. What began as a side hustle alongside her career as an occupational therapist has now become her primary focus. Alanna's passion for baby and toddler sleep was sparked when her older daughter was an infant. Determined to support her own baby, she immersed herself in the world of sleep consulting and discovered a deep love for it. She's dedicated to creating a supportive space where families can learn about sleep in a flexible, non-judgmental, and personalized way. Alanna takes pride in her work and has helped hundreds of families achieve the rest they need to thrive. Alanna, welcome to the Becoming a Sleep Consultant podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
I'm so excited to be here and that we could make it work.
Before we get started, tell us about you. What were you doing prior to becoming a sleep consultant, and why did you decide to jump into this line of work?
So I'm an OT, an occupational therapist, and I had been working as an OT for like 8 years. And I had a baby. Well, first it was COVID, and then I had a baby in early 2021. And I, learned about sleep and felt like, oh, I really like this. And I feel like there's kind of a missing spot in sleep that I could help fill. And also the idea of going back to in-person OT, which like is most of the OT world is in person during the pandemic, which we were still in the height of the pandemic, like all mask, goggles, the whole shebang. And I was, I had a new baby and was breastfeeding her and wanted to be with her. And so with all of that said, I kind of was like really seeking something different.
Yeah, got it. So I wanted to have you on the podcast to discuss slow and organic growth. And you've been in this business for about 3 years now. I think you launched your business in the fall of 2021. So let's talk about what that looked like. I'm wondering, what were your initial goals when you first were getting started?
Yeah, so my ideal vision was that this could be a full-time gig. But I also was aware that I had an infant. I wanted to also have more kids. I was about to move. And also, like, it takes work to start a business. I didn't expect that it was just, I was going to start and it was all going to boom and it was going to be perfect. So I really, from the get-go, had the mindset of like, I want to plant seeds for this growth that I'm like in control of. Like I know what's happening with my business. I mean, my first initial goals were to gain confidence around sleep and like really know what I'm talking about, feel confidence in talking to people about what I do and selling myself. So really just like getting my feet wet and laying the groundwork and the foundation for my business. And at first it was really just a side hustle. Any income was good. And also, if I didn't get income, like that's okay. I mean, I wanted to keep building, but it wasn't the primary goal.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is that you weren't putting too much pressure on yourself, at least in the beginning,
Yeah.
and maybe not now either. I don't know, but it sounds like you had really realistic expectations for what it takes to start a business from scratch, and you were willing to like take your time and put in the work and see what happened over time.
Yeah. I mean, I always had this vision and this dream of like, this could be the thing. But I really tried. I mean, it's not always easy, but I really tried to keep the pressure off that it had to be so quick. And, now my goals are a little more formal. Like I have revenue goals and whatever, but that's because I really think it's because I didn't put pressure on myself to grow super fast. I think some people are like, if I don't grow fast, like it's nothing, and then they don't do it anymore. To me, it was like, I'm gonna gain confidence. I'm gonna, build up my all the people that I've been connecting with and working with. And the goal is that over time, this can gradually become more and more of what I do. And now it is, which is great.
I love that. I think so many brand new sleep consultants right out of the gate, they're like, how do I get to the finish line like 3 weeks from now? Right. And I not only do I think that that's not realistic, but I also think it's detrimental to their long-term success because when you set unrealistic goals and then you don't meet them, then you feel like garbage. Whereas if you set
Yeah.
your goals small and you're really realistic about what it looks like to grow a legitimate and sustainable, successful business, then you can take each little victory as it comes and feel good about that.
Totally. Yeah, I once heard, I think on a podcast or something, and this was particularly about Instagram growth, but it was like, let's compare Instagram or, your business to like a party, like a house party. And if little by little people trickle in, you feel like, okay, I know who's here, I know what we're doing. But if like 100 people come at once, you're like, I don't know like what's happening in my house. I don't know who's here. So that's really resonated with me for Instagram and for my business. It's like if you kind of know what's going on in your business and you feel like in control of the situation, even if that's slow, that is better than just feeling like totally bombarded and being like, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah, I think that's right. And then also in the beginning, you don't have the experience to handle if a flood of business is coming your way. I think that that's potentially detrimental to your success because if you don't know how to juggle all of that, then you don't have success stories, you don't have referrals, and you can't really leverage that influx of business that's coming your way.
Right. And I feel like in the beginning of my business, especially when I really just had, one or two clients at a time, I felt like I was really able to, and then the information was still new in my brain. So it wasn't as like immediate. I knew how to answer things. So I felt like I was able to really give the support, good quality support to those people while I was still gaining confidence. And I think giving good quality support and like really spending time with people is something that I still really enjoy doing. And I think that's really what has kind of built my brand to what it is and why people trust me. So I just took it as I was able to do it. In the beginning, it was like I could only handle this amount of giving good quality support. And gradually over time, that built up. And also, I I'm sure a lot of people feel this way too. For me, I don't naturally want to sell myself, like sell my business. It's really hard for me to do that. So to feel really confident doing that, I needed to kind of like gradually increase my prices I increased my prices when I started feeling like, yeah, I'm good enough for that. Like I can do that. And then each time I felt that way, I would increase my prices. And I felt like little by little that happened. So for me, confidence and giving good quality support, it had to be gradual.
Yeah. And I think that good quality support is ultimately what leads to success and referrals, right? So,
Yeah.
if you're only supporting families at 65, 70%, the likelihood of them sharing your name with their friends is much lower than if you're giving them 100%.
Right. Totally. Yeah. So for me, the slow build has been extremely helpful for me. My babies are toddlers and they're in school like more time. I have more time to dedicate to it. And I also just have so much more experience and so much more confidence in giving good quality support to a much larger, number of people.
Yeah. When you were first getting started, where did you find those first initial clients? Who were they? Where did they come from?
Yeah, so the first few people that I worked with were pro bono. And for me, that was great because I needed to see what people were doing, what people wanted, how I was giving support. I didn't want people I knew because I just didn't want it to, I don't know, I didn't want to feel like pressure. So I think it was from a Facebook group or something and just kind of wanted volunteers for this. And then after that, like once I was charging a little bit, I, announced it on my Facebook and I started an Instagram, and I think the first few people were either kind of distant friends, like people I didn't really know, but are Facebook friends, or people those people knew. So yeah, somehow connected to my orbit.
Yeah. Was there a moment or time where you really felt like your business started to gain traction and momentum, where families were actually coming to you more than you seeking out those families?
I'm not sure that I can like pinpoint it to a specific time, but I feel like even in the last the last academic year, so maybe like my second year of the business, I was like, oh, more days than not, I'm like getting an email or getting someone reaching out to me about sleep or just signing up randomly. Like more and more people are just signing up without even talking to me. So I feel like probably in my second year of business, that's when it started happening more organically and more frequently.
Yeah, as I was outlining this episode and I was thinking about that question, I was like, huh, I don't even know if I know when that happened for me either to pinpoint it. But I do remember I still have this core memory of the very first family that hired me without ever speaking to me. Like I
I
just
also remember mine.
like I know her name. I am still
Mhm.
friendly with her. We're Instagram and Facebook friends, and like I've seen her kids grow up. And I will never forget her as that person who just went onto my website and paid me. I don't remember what my pricing was at that point. I think it was like $650. And she just paid me. She had never spoken to
Yeah.
me. I didn't know who she was. And I'm like, who is this person? And I think that that moment is something that most sleep consultants, I think, remember because it's a really big deal to have somebody
Yeah,
have enough trust in you to sign on to work with you without ever having a conversation. How cool is that?
totally. I also, mine was like one of those 3 a.m. signups.
Okay.
And I woke up in the morning and saw that someone had signed up. I'm like, I've never spoken to this person. And also, that client happened to be one of the only babies that we started and like not even any crying. And it was like 10 minutes later, fell asleep. I'm like, you could have easily done this. Yeah.
So 3 years in, what does it look like now? What's your client load? How many families are you supporting? How are you juggling it all? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean now, and this has always been my goal. Like my 2-year-old started school this year, so and she's in school like 4 days a week, and my almost 4-year-old is in school 5 days a week. So my goal has always been like I want to work for I don't work 40 hours. Well, maybe I do because I just enjoy it, but I don't dedicate 40 hours of full-time work to the business. I work probably half time or maybe a little bit more than that. And I support around 15 to 20 clients per month. And probably half of them are like just one-time calls, and half of them are, like 2-week clients. Maybe sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. And I build connections. Like I sometimes will speak at a mom's group or I'll, I go to networking events with perinatal professionals. I have relationships at this point with, other people in the baby space. Other than that, I don't have to do a lot to get emails and signups from people, which is really nice. And I have like a stream, coming from those referrals from those perinatal professionals. I'm the person that they trust in the world of sleep. Or, I just see like any connection I'm able to build as a good connection. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And I really feel confident that I'm able to kind of make it work as this is my work.
This is it.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to say out loud that you're 3 years in. This did not happen overnight. And maybe you got to the point where you were able to make it your work somewhere in year two. I don't know. I don't know where that moment was where you crossed the threshold to feeling really confident that this could be your largely sole income, that you're right. Like you're not really relying. I know you're like dabbling in a tiny bit of OT still, but like this is your primary source of income. And I think it's really important to say that that did not happen overnight. It takes time. It
Right.
was a slow build, it was organic. And 3 years in, most of that business is coming to you by way of people sharing your name in their communities, which is
Yeah.
what it should be.
Yeah. Right. And I also kind of recognize the stage of my life that I was in and my goals, like my personal goals too. Like the first year of business, my infant was like mostly home. I didn't really have any support. So this was just like on the side. She was napping or at night or whatever. My second year, she also was home. So I didn't really want to send to daycare like that young. Like I just wasn't ready for it. So I wasn't looking to do a full-time thing, but I would do, my parents helped, whatever. I did some hours of work. So that's like where I was at that year. The next year she was ready for school, but I had another baby. So it's like I wasn't for where I was at personally, I wasn't looking for overnight growth because I also wanted to balance having a family, which was a priority. Then the next year my other baby was home, whatever. And then this year I have more time and I've laid that initial groundwork and like I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to sustain it without doing as much OT. I was a little stressed about that, but it's been great. And I feel like really confident that's going to continue.
Have your goals evolved now that, when you first started, you were a stay-at-home mom who was interested in a side hustle, and now this is I hesitate to call it a full-time gig. I don't even call it a full-time gig for myself, even though it is, but I also, same as you, we have our lives. I play
Yeah,
tennis 2 to 3 times a week. I meet friends for lunch. I drop off my kids at school and I pick them up. And
right.
I have a really flexible life. So to say that it's full time feels weird, but I don't know. It probably is. Have your goals evolved and do you feel like you have room for more growth?
I mean, there's always room for more growth. I definitely feel like I have room for more growth. My goals have definitely evolved, and I feel like at the beginning of each year, I'm like, what's my goal for this year? And actually, at the beginning of this year, I had like, I don't know, five main goals, and one of them was a revenue goal, which I was like, I'm gonna set one that's like higher than I think I can reach. I think that's better than staying safe. Like it's like, all right, if I don't meet the goal, it's okay, but I'd rather try to push for it than not. And I met it at the beginning of December, and I didn't even think I could reach that in the beginning of the year. So that was really cool and like just kind of a note to myself of like, okay, really kind of like push yourself and set higher goals than maybe even if you might not accomplish them. You might accomplish them, so that's good. And I also actually just this month started doing potty training consults also. So that's something that I'm growing and just generally, always kind of gradually growing my Instagram and just trying to take on more clients, thinking of like what other things I can do. I've thought about having people work with me, but I'm not like ready to I don't think that that aligns with me, honestly. So I think it's like pressure because I see other people doing it. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should do that. I feel like my business brand is like that is very personal. So at this point, I like that. But in other ways, I feel like, offering different types of support and potty training is kind of my focus growth area right now.
Yeah. I love that you set a goal at the beginning of the year that you didn't think you were going to meet. And that you met it. How cool is that? I personally really struggle with that because I like to be successful. So
Hmm.
I hesitate, and this is something I'm working on in my own brain. It's okay to not meet your own goals. Just trying for them is the point of it, right? And so I really struggle with that. Sometimes I set a goal in my head that's my big goal, and then I set my realistic goal. And I like that you were able to just like set a really big goal in your brain and be okay with the fact that maybe you don't hit it. That's okay.
Right.
But you
Well, that
did.
was
So that's even
advice.
better.
Yeah. I had a sleep client who is also a business coach. So like we just were kind of talking stuff about entrepreneurship and um, she she kind of planted that seed in my mind of it's okay if you don't meet all the goals, but it's better to kind of stretch yourself and see like maybe you can meet that goal. And if you do, it's great. And if you don't, that's okay. You can keep trying.
Yeah.
So
How do you,
that really resonated with me.
do you feel the pressure to grow quickly Do you feel like the pressure to grow quickly is there somewhere out there, whether it's in your brain, even though you know what works for you is to grow at your own pace? Do you feel that outside pressure?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a human person. On slow months, it's very easy to get in my head of like, okay, like maybe I should just get an OT job. Like I can always fall back on that. But then I have like a really successful month and I'm like, oh no, like I'm good. And now I feel like more consistently I'm having those successful months and it's evened out, but definitely throughout the last 3 years, there have been times where I'm like, I don't know if this is gonna happen. Even on Instagram, like I feel like there's a lot of pressure to like go viral and like have, a large following. And for me, I think engagement and having a community is probably better than being viral and having a lot of followers. But it's really hard to think that way. I don't know how social media works with your brain and the pressure around it. But I keep falling back to, yeah, but like think of all the things that you have built in your foundation and the community of people that come to you as their guidance. And I really believe in my brand. I really believe that I have a good community. So I just keep trying to remind myself those things, even if things feel slow or, maybe have more doubts in my mind.
Yeah. And I think even, I mean, maybe you can relate to this. This is how I feel is like 3 years into your business, when you have a slow month, that's still way busier than you were in year one or year two,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So we have to some degree, manage our own expectations, right? Because,
Yeah,
like, I
totally.
often think about that in my own business. Sometimes I feel like I'm having a slow month. And then I think back to what it looked like a few years ago and what my goals were a few years ago. And I need to get a grip, like
Yeah, yeah.
business is fine, right? So I think it's all perspective and keeping your brain in check and realizing that as long as you're moving in the right direction, and you know what, you don't always move in the right direction. My business overall this year was the first year that was slower than the year before. That had never happened to me in my business before. And I had been mentally preparing for that because at some point that's going to happen, right? That's just
hmm
the way the cookie crumbles. And you can't just grow every single year indefinitely.
Right.
And that's what organic growth looks like. It's two steps forward, one step back, three steps forward, one or two steps back. And becoming comfortable with that, I think, is important for me, for like a mental health perspective, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what we tell our clients. Progress isn't always linear. And if you're looking at a big chart, you're generally looking for a trend in the right direction. But if you zoom in, you're going to see little ups and downs. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of the name of the game.
Yeah. I also think it's important to not just focus on revenue, because even if
Mm-hmm.
revenue is down a little bit, I think about, for me to like use this year as an example, I learned so much this year in how to grow a business. Even, several years in, I'm still learning whether it's how to use my email marketing more effectively or SEO strategies or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
Every single year, I'm learning new things that will, even if it doesn't help me to increase my revenue, it might help me to decrease my workload, right? Maybe
Right.
this year, and I actually think this happened for me, even if revenue dropped a little bit, I worked a lot less, which
Mm-hmm.
means I put systems in place, I automated,
Right.
I got better at doing what I do. So it all takes less time. And that is worth, I don't even know how much, it's worth a lot to
Yeah,
me.
totally.
So I think it's important for everybody listening that, it's not all just about money. I think it's about lifestyle and making the business work for you. And, you know, we all have good days, good months, bad months. And as you said, as long as you're trending in the right direction and your business is aligning with your life and feels good for you, I don't know, that's all I can
Totally.
ask for personally.
Yeah, and I feel like some of those slower months are months that you're able to kind of plant more seeds and like spend more time, right? Like you were saying, I'm able to maybe go to more moms groups and get myself out there or like focus more on my Instagram stories than I don't know. So there are just things you maybe will have more time for to plant more seeds. And then oftentimes when you have slow months, then you have a bigger month. as long as you're planting those seeds.
Where can people find you if they want to follow you on social media or maybe check out your website?
Yeah, so my Instagram is at Big Picture Sleep, and my website is bigpicturesleep.com. One last thing that I was thinking about in terms of slow growth and really building up a business gradually is I feel like the mentality that I've had around just like doing the thing has really helped me. Because if you spend a lot of time making sure it's all 100% lined up, you're 100% ready to go, to me, that's kind of a waste of time for me and my style. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get myself out there. Like with potty training, I was nervous and I'm like, okay, but I have to start and I have to plant seeds because if I waited, then in 6 months I would be new and had no experience. But now I'm starting now. I'm going to have experience. And then in 6 months, I'll feel like so much more confident about it. So I just feel like done is better than perfect, especially when you're thinking of slow, gradual, organic growth.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I talk to people all the time who haven't even enrolled in a sleep consultant certification program yet, and they tell me they've been thinking about it for a year and a half or 3 years. And when people say that to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, can you imagine where this person would be in their business? Let's take you, for example. For somebody who says they've been thinking about it for 3 years, they could be where you are right now. Like, how ridiculous is
Yeah,
that, you know? And I
totally.
think those same people who mull over getting started sometimes also mull over, you know, how are they going to put themselves out there? What are they going to call their business? Should they make a website? Every decision takes so much thought. And I'm just more of the camp of just get it done. If you don't love it, you can do it again another way later, you know, just start working. And you will figure it out along the way. Each of my businesses has already had 2 websites. Snooze Fest, I'm on my second iteration of that website. Same with CPSM. And you just move, get it done. You
My first
learn so
website
much
was,
along the way.
yeah. Yeah, my talking like my first website was so, I mean, I had it for until this year. I redid it this year, but it worked. It was good, but it was very Hamish. It was very just bare bones. I could easily spend so much time obsessing over it and making sure it was like super beautiful and perfect. But then I wouldn't have had all the experience that I had for a couple years. And I didn't want to put a lot of money up front toward it. So I just did it myself and made it work. And people don't care. People don't care about that stuff. People care about the support that you're giving them.
I think most people who are listening to this podcast, whether they're interested in becoming sleep consultants or whether they're sort of in the beginning stages, this is something that a lot of people struggle with. And, you know, I just said it to someone the other day. I think it's a Michael Jordan quote, but I'm going to botch it. But he said something along the lines of like, I miss more shots than most people take, right?
Hmm,
Like
yeah, yeah.
in order
You
to
miss
be
100% of the shots that you don't take.
though,
I think
no,
that's
that's
it.
different. I think that's Wayne
Oh,
Gretzky, which is,
oh, oh,
I
okay.
think that's Wayne Gretzky, and that's another really good one. But I think it was Michael Jordan who said, I miss more shots than most people take. And
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
right. And so, like, you have to put yourself out there. You have to try things. You have to take shots. You can miss all day long and still be one of the best. And I think that that's really important for growing a business. And if you're not willing to put yourself out there, you're not willing to talk to people, you're not willing to try new things, then it's going to be really hard. And, you
Yeah,
know, I'm sure you could probably list hundreds of, you know, missteps or mistakes or mini failures in your business that are really just learning lessons. And
totally.
they've all led you to where you are today, which is running a successful full-time sleep consulting business, which is super cool.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
it. All right, let's wrap up there. Alanna, it was great chatting with
Okay.
you.
You
Would love
too.
to do it again soon. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Becoming a Sleep Consultant podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean so much to me if you would rate, review, and subscribe. When you rate, review, and subscribe, this helps the podcast reach a greater audience. I am so grateful for your support. If you would like to learn more about how you can become a certified sleep consultant, head over to my Facebook group, Becoming a Sleep Consultant, or to my website, thecpsm.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you will tune in for the next episode.